Hello and welcome back to the Marketing for Business podcast. Now, you might have realised by now it is not your host, Scott Wilson. My name is Olivia Hale and I am the Operations Manager here at Digital Influence. Scott is actually overseas having a fantastic time at the Football World Cup, but I am here for a quick takeover episode to celebrate 200 episodes of the Marketing for Business podcast. Now, here at DI, we are so lucky to be able to soak up all of Scott's knowledge and wisdom over, 40-ish hours a week. But we're also so lucky that we get to learn so much from our clients, our partners, our mentors within the business. And that's the whole reason the Marketing for Business podcast was created. So you have over 200 hours in your ears now of life lessons, learnings, opportunities from business owners, from incredible leaders, from amazing people in general who all have fantastic stories. So I have pulled my team out for 5 minutes each for a little bit of a rapid fire episode to learn which ones are their favorites, what are their key takeaways, and why they recommend you listen to those episodes if you haven't already. So let's get into it. Hi, Deanna.
Hi, love.
Hey, thanks for coming to hang out with me and talk about the 200 episodes of the Marketing for Business podcast. Out of 200 episodes, was there one that really stuck with you?
Yes, so I really resonated with Jake Bailey's episode on how to back yourself.
Yeah, I love it.
I feel like right now that's just so prevalent in my life, in my career, my personal life. I've had a lot of really good takeaways from that episode.
Well, on those takeaways, so I've got 3 of those takeaways right in front of me. The first one you mentioned was around celebrating the small wins, right? You mentioned we, don't really celebrate enough of the small wins. Is there a small win recently that you've had that you've caught yourself almost letting slip past?
Definitely. I think just any really good interactions with businesses at the moment, whether it's positive, whether it's something that we can work on, is just something to really celebrate because regardless, we're still learning. And if businesses are giving us the opportunity to do that right now, whether it's, here's what we can do better or here's something to actually celebrate, I think all of that should be taken as a real victory at the moment in the economy. Yeah.
We're so lucky as well to have Scott, right, who's one of his personal core values is celebrate your victories. So it's epic that we get to have so many little moments around the office where whether it's a 10-second party for something someone's done or, our core value Fridays where we give shout outs. How cool is it that we have that culture of celebrate your victories?
Exactly.
Right?
Even just our everyday meetings that we have at the start of to kick off our day, it always has a win or a positive. And it really, even if you don't share a win, you're thinking about or you're celebrating someone else's win. And that's enough to find the silver lining in everything, which is great.
On silver linings, one thing Jake talks about in the episode is salvaging, right? So he talks about finding the good inside the bad without pretending the bad isn't there. Is that something that you do naturally or is it something you've had to work at?
Definitely something I had to work at.
Yeah.
Being a naturally positive person, you can still feel that. And I feel like that was really, Jake's episode really put it into perspective because you don't always have to go through something so horrible or drastic. And he says it himself, even though he's gone through generally some of the worst things a human could go through. Anything you go through can be seen as a challenge or a how can I do that better or how can I, achieve, how can I accomplish that? And with the right people, with the right support, that's exactly how you can, improve that for next time or look and reflect on it better, which I think was a really good takeaway.
Cool. So, hey, we're going to jump into takeaway 2 now, which is around how efficacy shapes how you see challenges. Walk me through what you mean by this. And is there a moment at work or outside it where you've really felt that shift happen in you?
Yeah, I think just for me right now, being in my late 20s, both work-wise and personal-wise, you're going through so many big life moments and other people's life moments. And, you can really take it as this is where I'm at in life and this is where I want to get to. And I feel like learning from Scott, that has also been one of my biggest takeaways personally, is that we can all be at such different levels in life, but what your end goal or when you figure out what you want and your values will follow you through that. And I think that kind of tries to build high self-efficacy through that because the higher level of self-efficacy you have, it's kind of taking you through the tougher moments, or when you're really questioning, what am I doing, or what do I want in life? So I feel like that's both work-wise and personal at the moment.
Love it. Hey, we've been chatting for almost 5 minutes now. It goes super fast. But if someone is pressing play on the Marketing for Business podcast for the first time, what is one thing that you'd really recommend that they take away from this episode?
I think taking away from the episode is don't climb mountains alone. That for me was like the biggest takeaway. You can accomplish things with people in your corner, and you don't feel like you have to do everything alone. Yes, there's things that you want to accomplish alone, but it's always going to be with the support of others. And that's something that we say all the time at DI as well.
Love it. Thanks for hanging out with me, Deanna.
Thanks for having me, Liv.
Hi, Ray.
Hello, how are you?
I'm so good. Hey, I would love to know, we've had 200 episodes. Out of all of them, what made you choose this episode as your favourite, and tell me about it?
Yeah, okay, so this episode actually is one, you sent me a text and you said, Rachel, you're going to want to see this one. And so I jumped on it. And it's the one with Dr. Sarah Antich, and she talks about the executive frame a little bit. And you and I, we love psychology. We're really interested in psychology. You're actually going into some study and stuff like that. But I'm particularly interested in psychology at the point of stress, because of what I do with my video coaching and clients. So I'm really, really interested in the way that people's brains break down when they're really, really stressed. And that is what Dr. Sarah talks about. She talks about her executive frame, and she breaks it down into 3 parts. But the one that interests me the most is your emotional intelligence, your self-regulation. And so she talks about the fact that if you are not regulated, you're stressed, you cannot think.
I love it, Rach, because you have such, we say it all the time, right? You have such a natural ability for coaching clients on video. And to be honest, not everyone wants to see you when you turn up,
No,
right?
most of them don't want to see me, actually. Yeah, it's sort of like the dentist.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm
you know
not
you
swear,
need to
but
do
yeah,
it. Yeah, you know you need to do it. You know you're going to get a good outcome, but it's
Yes.
not always the most fun thing in the world, right?
No.
So you would see clients nervous, etc.
Yes.
at the minute you put a camera in your face. So
Straight
what
away.
about Sarah's podcast was like a tangible takeaway for you that you can implement?
Absolutely. So first of all, it was just, I guess, a way to give some language to clients, because one thing that I'll hear over and over again is like, why can I not speak? Why can I not think? Why can I, I'll tell them a line and they just can't retain it. And they're like, what is going on? I'm normally a very smart, high-performing individual. What the hell is going on? And it's like, you're not regulated. You're really stressed. You're in lizard brain. You know what I mean? And so my takeaway is then, how do we bring people back to the fun of it? How do we bring people into regulation? And Dr. Sarah, she's got one little tip that I would bring, and she talks about the physiological sigh.
Love that. Yeah.
Okay. And this is a great one. And so she says you inhale, but then you inhale again. So you do 2 inhales and then a long exhale. And what's happening is when we inhale, our heart rate is speeding up. But when we exhale, our heart rate is slowing down. And so what we do is we go and then a big long exhale, and that really helps us to calm down. And so if I have a really nervous client, then we'll sometimes do some breathing, but otherwise it's just about enjoyment. How can you try and make the most of it?
But how epic is it that that podcast has given you the language, like you said before, instead of just being like, oh, you'll be fine, take a deep breath.
Yeah.
You're like, no, this is an actual
This is normal.
studied, proven thing by a doctor that's going to work for you, right?
Absolutely.
Like, how cool is it that you not only can come in and tell them, hey, this is what your video is going to be, this is what we're achieving, but this is how I'm going to help you get there.
Absolutely. And I just think it's hard. You know what I mean? And you operate, you're stressed, you're doing something really out of the ordinary. So, let's have some fun with it. Let's take some deep breaths if we need to. But it is so good, I think, for people to understand that there's something deeply psychological going on.
Yeah. Totally.
And, cut themselves some slack and give it their best.
One example of some language that Dr. Sarah used was around, flipping your lid.
Yes.
And I really love that as well. I mean, for you, you work in a agency, and agency life can be, we love it, obviously,
Yes,
but it
we
can
do.
be pretty tough and pretty rapid at times.
Yeah.
Is there examples, for you personally, where you felt yourself either flip your lid or go a little bit offline that you've been able to implement something from this podcast?
Yeah, I think, do you know what? Sometimes it's about being proactive. And so actually there was something from the podcast that Scott mentioned, and it was one of my biggest takeaways, which is really, really funny. But Scott is a very, very clever man. I know he's watching. Hello. And, he is very clever. But he said there was something that he used to do when he was just starting out this agency, because he was grinding, right? And he was just so busy. He had physical batteries in front of him on his desk, and he would like take them away as his energy went down, right? And so he had something physical to remind him, I'm done. Like, my battery's depleted. And he said he would go for a walk when they come down. And since then, actually, I've been thinking I need to implement something. Probably not batteries, because they're in very high demand around here. Like, we like, you know what I mean? So maybe not them, but something. And so for me, that's what I do, because I think if you've flipped your lid, there's lots of things, you can breathe, you can take yourself out, you can go for a walk, but at that point it's starting to get a little, you're in the red zone. So it's like, how can you make sure that you're actually monitoring your energy beforehand? So like nutrition and stuff like that's really important.
Well, especially in your role, right, Rach? Like, you have to turn up and be the energy on site with clients, right? And you spend so much time out with them that, like, you need to model the way you want them to show up on camera. So like, if you're not able to look after yourself and put those frameworks in place for yourself, the clients aren't going to get the best version of you either, right?
Exactly. Just coaching is exactly the same as leadership. Like, you show, don't tell. So I absolutely cannot ask a client to show up with energy if I'm not modeling that. At the same time, if I'm noticing that a client's a little bit stressed, I'll drop my shoulders, I'll lean back in my seat because everything's fine, we're good. You know what I mean? It's those little things.
You're chill, you've got it. They don't need to stress.
You know what I mean? So that's like, but if you can manage, if you can keep yourself in the green so that you've got the energy to give to your favourite thing, or my favourite thing, which is people, then you're good to go.
Rach, there's 200 episodes for people to choose from. If they were pressing play on this one, why would you recommend they pick it?
You need to understand yourself. You need to understand what's going on in your brain. And a lot of the people that are watching these podcasts are going to be business owners. And you're going to be stressed. It's not easy out there.
It's tough work out there.
So if you can understand what's going on, then you're half a step closer to implementing some changes in your life and succeeding.
Rach, thanks for taking some time to hang out with me and see a client. So I really appreciate it.
That's right. I'm actually going to go see a client right now. So I'm out.
Talk to you soon. Okay. Well, I gave the team the task of choosing one podcast episode of the 200. And it wasn't much surprise to me that you chose the Shane Bond episode.
Yeah. So obviously grew up with cricket all around. So I thought the one guest who I know Scott's interviewed that is a cricketer, I would go Shane Bond, and he's a big idol of mine. So it was a pretty simple choice for me. Yeah.
Love it. Hey, your first takeaway you noted down was around dealing with pressure.
Yeah.
And he talked heaps about being like in uncomfortable situations every day through the police, right? Where do you get your reps at being uncomfortable?
I think, especially with being in this office, you get a lot of opportunity to do things that you haven't done before and put yourself in situations that are a little bit uncomfortable. And that's definitely where sort of I've learned dealing in those situations, you just grow yourself and you learn a lot from them. So even though they are sort of uncomfortable things to be doing, it's definitely helped me grow myself. And sort of this is my first job that I'd say is I've really wanted to do. So definitely putting myself in situations where I am uncomfortable has helped me sort of learn new things and learn about myself a little bit as well.
Yeah, like we've seen that massively in you over the last couple of years, right?
Yeah.
And it's been so epic to see from someone who came into this industry with not a whole heap of experience to then, you know, running client meetings and being comfortable ringing them, you know, and having that comms with them has been so awesome to see, right? And the growth in you has been massive from that. I guess let's just jump back a little bit in terms of, you know, getting yourself into this industry. It probably was a little bit uncomfortable for you too, right? Like talk about how you managed to land your job here at DI.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I knew sort of I had to set myself apart from others because I didn't have that industry experience. So I sort of had to go out of my comfort zone and reach out. So I reached out to Scott sort of on email when he didn't have jobs going. So I kind of had to go out of my comfort zone to just, put myself out there. And when jobs did come up at DI, that's when I leant back on to Scott and saying, hey, I've reached out before. I'm really excited, really keen, and just want to get stuck into the industry. And I think that's kind of what set me apart. And I know Scott definitely appreciates people going out of their way to set themselves apart from others. Yeah.
Your second takeaway you put down was around creating an environment to build leaders. Shane said that like his approach is to push the top players the hardest and let it trickle down, not coddle the least experienced.
Yeah.
Does that match how you think leadership spreads through a team? And talk to me about your experience around that.
Yeah, well, obviously, Scott and Olive foster an environment that you want to build leaders here. And I definitely think Scott and yourself give opportunities for people to grow themselves and become a leader. And I've definitely felt that where I've been given opportunities where in the past I'll be like, no, that's too scary, that's too daunting. But I know that will help leadership qualities in myself and help myself grow. So it's definitely something that I love, and that's what I love about DI is that when I get those opportunities to sort of be a leader, and I love to take them and really go with it.
Well, that's the whole reason we've got the core value courage over comfort,
Exactly,
right?
yeah.
Because, we live and breathe it, and we love seeing people, do new things that they couldn't do 6 months, a year ago.
Yeah.
And it's pretty epic. Is there anything, Shane talks about the flip side of that, a thing that you've seen a workplace do that quietly kills leadership before it starts. For you, have you ever had any experiences in that space?
Not really, but you can definitely see it. Like I talk to other people who are also in the industry at different agencies or whatever, and you can definitely tell that when there is sort of that hierarchy, and you can't, if you're not in that sort of top leadership position, then you can't go past them, or like you have to sort of stay in your lane. Whereas here, there's definitely those opportunities, even if you aren't the sort of the leader in terms of the hierarchy, you still have those opportunities to do cool things and be a leader. Yeah.
Well, talking about staying in your lane, your last takeaway, which we'll wrap up with, was around staying in the queue. Is that, a major thing you'd want someone to take away from Shane's episode?
Absolutely. Like definitely just being patient and giving yourself the time, and opportunities will arise. For example, like we said before, just waiting, but putting myself out there, but waiting until that opportunity came with the job that I got here at DI, just making sure that you don't need, like there is so much time and you don't need to be push. You can just wait, grow yourself, learn a lot more. And then when the time comes, that's when you can definitely go forward and take the opportunities.
Pretty similar to cricket, right? You
Absolutely.
Got to keep out the good balls and smack the bad ones.
Absolutely, and that's the good thing. So I definitely took a lot away from sort of Shane Bond and his experience, and then obviously it relates well with him being a coach and then Scott being a leader. There's a lot of things there that you can take away. It was a really good episode.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we managed to get a little bit of cricket talk in there at the end.
Absolutely.
I know you've got to run to a client meeting, so thanks for taking the time to hang out with me.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Luke, 200 episodes of the Marketing for Business podcast to talk about. You chose the Ben Keeps episode as your favourite, Cactus Outdoor. Tell me why this one really resonated with you.
Yeah, so I really resonated with this podcast because Ben is such a knowledgeable guy, and his experience in tech and business is so inspirational to me. He started in Silicon Valley, which is incredible to hear about his journey.
Love it. Luke, he talks heaps about Silicon Valley and his experience there. You don't quite have the same experience, being 18. Tell me about how you got into this industry, first of all, and what really made you want to crack the digital marketing game.
Yeah, so I started in high school producing content in the back of class. Normally, like, kids would be, doing their math in the math room, but I'd be sitting in the back of the room editing, learning how to create videos and stuff. And then I left high school because I had the passion to work for an agency and pursue content creation as a career. And I had an opportunity with digital influence, and here we are today.
Luke, often in rooms, you are the youngest person, right? Working with some pretty experienced business owners. And, it was so epic to hear Ben talk about his experience. When you are working with the business owners on content creation, etc., is there any times you ever think like, how did I get in this room?
Yeah. So it's often like a feeling of imposter syndrome, but like throughout the past year of working with big business owners, I feel like you ground yourself and you kind of get on the same level as them, and you do see them as just people, just business owners, and you stop, I guess, idolizing them as such like a high person to like
a high person to look up to, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, you're in the room too because you've got expertise and you've got knowledge to help them.
Yeah.
And I think that's been something that's been so cool to see over your career so far. I said it before with Will, one of our core values is courage over comfort. And I think, you especially as someone that's really nailed that in this space, right? Talk to us about a couple of the ways that you've nailed courage over comfort over your time here at DI.
I would say just saying yes to every opportunity possible and just being really open-minded when walking into those big rooms with the big operators and big founders.
Yeah, love it. Hey, another thing Ben talks about a lot in the episode is around the importance of brand, right? He talks about the fact that, there's been people that get married and have funerals, in Cactus outdoor gear. And in your work, you're a real expert with brand. I guess, like from your perspective, what does a brand actually have to do to be able to earn trust with its customers, especially through video content?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so Scott preaches know, like, trust so many times. I've heard that countless times before. But I think that just building the authenticity behind the person that's speaking and making them come across as relatable and grounded.
One thing that Ben talks a lot about in the podcast episode is around AI and, making sure that you're kind of spending a little bit of time playing with it every day, around 30 minutes. Is AI something that you've seen change in your own role?
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating, right? Like at the start, I didn't see much of the impact of AI, but now as Sarah and I are working on these big brain level videos, like we have hours worth of footage, and to sit through that and cull through like the bits that are worth showing to our audiences is just so time consuming, right? But now we're running through the transcript through AI, getting it to write a prompt, and now we can get markers of where we cut in and out. Brilliant. So that means we could have like a video edit that would take maybe 3 hours. Now it could take 20 minutes.
Love it, Luke. Hey, you're someone, who has taken away so much from this episode and someone that we've seen throughout your time at DI really grow. And it's, through being in rooms with people that, are more experienced than you and I guess been in business longer than you, but also through learning from people like Scott in the podcast, right? So thanks for taking 5 minutes to hang out with me today. I know you've got a lot of videos to edit, so I will let you get back to it. Liv, there's over 200 episodes of Marketing for Business podcast to choose from. Which one did you pick as your favourite? This is a surprise to me as well.
Sorry, I didn't send it in beforehand. But when I sat down to think about Marketing for Business podcast, there is one quote, and I couldn't even remember what episode it was from at the time. So the concept stuck with me and has. And then when I went back, I actually found out that it was the very first episode, which sounds like I've just picked the very first one Scott's ever released. But in this episode with Kevin Eder from Trade Staff, they talk about a concept which is about a combine harvester and a baler. Okay, and yes, at the time I did have to Google what that was.
Not a big
farming girl. Yeah, no, wasn't a big farming girl at the time. But actually, this video was released, the podcast episode was released in 2022, which is such a long time ago compared to now. But for that entire time has been the concept that has stuck with me the most. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Love it. Why is that concept stuck with you the most? What about it has resonated with you for almost 4 years now?
Yeah. I think when I first heard about the concept, and I think I related to some parts of it and some parts I didn't. But the more that I have, grown and learnt over the years, as you do, the more that it's just made so much more sense and become so much clearer. So anyway, the concept is that when in a workplace or in a working relationship or in a team, you have got someone who is a combine harvester and you've got someone who's a baler. And at the time, you were the combine harvester and I was the baler. Believe it or not.
Yeah.
So the combine harvester is obviously someone who gets stuff done fast. That person a lot of the time gets a lot of the prop because they are just they are quick to do stuff. They do a lot. They've got this volume of work coming out. Okay, but in the podcast episode, they were talking about how that is just chaos unless you have a baler. Yeah. And so I think a lot of the time in that situation, the baler gets, labeled as just being someone who is organized or tidy, etc. But actually one can't exist without the other. And I think over the last, 4 years, I have seen it play out in whether you have different clients that someone is the combine harvester and someone's the baler for,
Yeah.
or you have with different people and different situations.
Yeah.
And so there's been so many different times over the last 4 years with different people, different accounts, etc., that, you know, we've swapped in those roles, or, you know, I've worked with Isabella in those roles, etc.
Totally. There's also, I think, like what we've learned, you know, we obviously work pretty closely together. There's also tasks that we swap in and out of, right? Like we'll often be like, hey, look, I need you to lead this meeting. I'm going to lead these two, or I need you to take care of these action steps. And I think having that ability with someone within your business, whether it's, you know, like a business partner like Scott and I have that dynamic, or, you know, a colleague like you and I have that dynamic, it's so important to have, because you can't actually do everything on your own. As much as you do try, there's simply not enough hours in the day. So having someone that can support you in that space and help you get shit done, as you so eloquently put it, is so important. And, you know, that's a concept that we talked to the team about the other day, right? We sat down and we said, you know, we used a little bit of a different analogy, but often there needs to be a task manager and a task doer, which is basically the exact same concept, just different language.
100%. And I think because of that is the exact same concept applied. However, I think over, you know, the 4 years that when I had first listened to it, I had thought, you know, you've got a task doer and someone who's organized, tidy, and that's sort of all. Yeah. But when we, you know, over the last 4 years getting into it, you actually can't, you know, exist without the other, and both are just as important as the other. You know, when we were talking to the team about it, it wasn't just someone is better at certain tasks. It's actually the person who is accountable for the task, you know, is usually the one who is, you know, maybe more attention to detail or better at managing timelines. But their job is also to help manage the other person and make sure that they're not burning themselves out either. Yeah. So both parts are so important. And I think it's been, my favorite out of all of the podcasts so far.
Yeah, no, like, I know that Scott and I have definitely seen you grow in that space over the past 4 years, and it's been really epic to see. Like, you touched on Isabella before. Now you've got your own Baler within the team, right? And as we continue to build out resource within the DI team, we're often thinking, okay, cool, like what's the dynamic of this working relationship? Because that is really important to be able to make sure that we're still delivering the best for clients and we're still moving at pace, but we've then got someone who can then pull us back, slow us down, because otherwise you and I would just be 100 miles an hour at everything, right?
All the time.
Yeah. No, I really loved that episode as well. And it is really epic because, Kevin just has so much experience in business, and to hear that, you know, was something that I completely clicked with as well. And I've definitely seen it play out in our dynamic over the years too, and my dynamic with Scott too. He's definitely a combine harvester and I'm the baler there, but in other dynamics, you know, I'm the combine harvester.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to hang out with me for 5 minutes, Liv. I really appreciate you sharing your insights.
Thanks, Liv.
Sarah, I know we are going to have a fantastic chat because we always do, but this time it is actually around something specific, which is your favourite podcast episode. You picked the episode with Tony Jenkins. Talk me through it. Tell me why.
Absolutely, Liv. So I had to go back into the archives for this, like quite literally all the way back to, I think it was November 2022. And I think I counted down and it might have been the 12th podcast recorded. There were a couple of things that I remember way back in 2022. I was pretty new to DI at the time. And a lot of those have stuck with me or I've witnessed and learned from since then. You know, everything that Tony talks about, and I know that Scott and Tony are really great friends, you know, both in business and outside of business. I'm sure you've heard him probably talk about their gym sessions they do together. But, you know, I heard that all the way back then, and what I've witnessed since then is seeing you and Scott really live a lot of the principles and therefore incorporate those sorts of principles that he talked about in those early podcasts into everything that we do at DI now.
Love it. Talk me through one of those principles. What was one that stood out to you?
Okay, so the biggest one when going back and re-listening to it is we have a core value called address the elephant and eat the frog. Tony talked about that, about how he was given a little frog that sits on his desk and it reminds him to do the tough things first. And I think everybody at DI is constantly reminded. We talk about it. We have our core values on the wall. And I think, you know, sometimes when you've got a big to-do list, maybe it's easier to do the fluffy, easy things first. But actually, it's when you eat the frog and get those tough things over and done with, you feel like you've achieved so much with your day. And, you know, if you only get one tough thing done, you can go home and be like, wow, I did the tough thing, but I can feel really good about that outcome.
That's so funny, Sarah. I didn't even know that he had the a physical frog on there, and that's a core value that we brainstormed together at our team day, right? Because it was really important to us to make sure that we weren't just doing the fun things. Sometimes the hard things suck, but sometimes they're the things that move the needle the most,
the
right?
tough conversations, that's what I think being part of like marketing is. Sometimes it's not always fun and fluffy, even though when you sometimes see some of the fun things we get up to and we post on socials, it is a really fantastic job. But sometimes there are hard conversations that you have to have either with our clients or with each other just to keep us all accountable for, what we need to be doing within our roles.
Love it. I've got down another takeaway here that you noted, which was around the fact that like consistency is key to a strong brand. You are a big fan of brand here, and you're a big fan of like brand development for some of our clients. Tell me why that resonated with you so much.
Absolutely. So Tony talked a lot about getting his own videographers and photographers in-house, which created consistency across all of his agents. His agents could opt to use them. And again, talking about Harcourt Tomwood, that created like a real brand. I started at DI around 2022. I was new. I was the only person really in content. We had TikTok Live back then, but our content team has grown so much. One thing that I think is really cool for business owners to maybe take away from that is, whether it's your tone of voice, whether it's your photography, whether it's your videography, just being consistent is actually really powerful. I mean, again, like whether it's going back and being like, are you using the same font across your socials, in your videos, wherever you're putting content out. And I think that creates just this nice little bow on top of all of your content, everything that you're putting out. And I think that was one thing that I really loved from Tony's podcast, because, you might think real estate, you wouldn't be talking about like content and video, but here we are because it's so important.
What do you think the hardest part is for businesses staying consistent over time? Do you reckon they get sick of their content before their audience does?
Yeah, absolutely. When you're creating content yourself, it feels like a bit of a brain drag. And I know it from like personal experience, but I think that's the thing when you're working with an agency, a team, is that you've got so many people bringing fresh ideas that it's almost hard to get to, any type of brain drain around it. And I think for business owners, creating content is so valuable, but it often gets put down to the bottom of the pile of importance. You've got so many things to think about as a business owner. And I totally get it. Content doesn't feel important when you've got, everything from running 1,000,000 miles an hour. But I think, having that consistency, posting, whether it's once a day or once a week, that is going to show your clients, your customers, that you are consistent, that you are, you're the top of your field, you know what you're talking about. And I mean, we've seen it across so many of our clients, how much that has helped them simply by being consistent with their brand.
Sarah, 5 minutes chatting to you has flown by, as it always does. We didn't even get to touch on putting the fizz into it, which is a very famous Tony Jenkins saying.
Absolutely.
But I really appreciate you coming and hanging out with me for 5 minutes to talk about content.
Absolutely. I could have gone for another 5, but I've loved talking to you, Liv.
Thanks, Sarah.
Hey, it's 2026. You're listening to this podcast and you've probably heard of AI. So here's what I want you to do. We've created a free playbook that'll actually help you with AI and help your business get recommended. So all you need to do is go to the show notes or the link that's in this video, and I'll send you this playbook for free.
Izzy, you are one of our newest team members here at DI, but you've had an absolutely fantastic start to your role. I asked you to pick your favourite podcast episode of the 200. Which one did you choose?
My favourite was Why Everybody Needs a Coach with Margie Foster.
Love it. Why was that one your favourite?
It was my favourite because it covered so many different aspects of life, like Margie obviously going over being in the foster system and then going on to help youth coming from all different backgrounds, getting them to their highest potential. And I thought it was just really, really inspiring.
Love it. I've got your 3 takeaways here. Your first takeaway, and this is one I'm very excited to talk about, was around being intentional with your goals and celebrating the small wins. First of all, let's talk about goals. How do you set your goals, and what did you take away from this particular episode to help you with that?
This one that I took away from the episode was definitely writing down your goals. And the whole point of being intentional with them is it's all well and good to have goals and to have visions for the future, but how are you acting on them? Yeah. And I thought that was really important, and just making sure that with every goal, there's all these like, not subtasks, but sub goals. Like what steps am I going to take to get these goals? Do I need to write them down? Who's going to help me in this environment? So that was, really important.
Yeah, it's so important when you are setting a goal, right? To break it down and have those micro steps. You could set a goal of, I don't know, save $10,000, but if you don't start with saving your first 100 and then your first 1,000, etc., how are you going to get there? And goal setting is something that I've really taken away from my time here at DI. It's pretty cool. I like to say inherited, slightly taken over Scott's office. But in his office, he has a box of books of his old journals. I think there's like 200 of something of them in there. And every single morning, Scott writes down his goals. And I think it's such a powerful takeaway.
And to be able to look back at that and to see how far you've come with everything as well.
On looking back at that, Marg talks about the fact that often we are too hard on ourselves and that we need to make sure, we're celebrating small gains as well. Is that something that comes naturally to you, or is it something that you've learnt to do throughout your life, I guess?
Something that I've definitely learnt to do because I grew up doing competitive gymnastics, and so there was a lot of being too hard on yourself and stuff like that, but then growing up and moving away from that and coming into the working world, definitely celebrating the small things, or as Scott would say, celebrating your victories. So
Love it. Your second takeaway you had noted down was around the fact that sometimes you have to close one door to open the next. That's something you've done, in your career recently and had quite a big pivot into the digital marketing world. Talk me through that and how you got here.
It was definitely something I thought about for so long. Digital marketing was something that I really wanted to get into. But again, being in a whole different role, it was how do I get there? How am I going to make it? And ultimately, it was the chance to take a complete step back, completely close that door, work on something else for a while, and eventually the doors opened here, which is just fantastic, and I'm so grateful for it.
Well, Marg talks about the fact that, she talks about it as courage and walking away before you've got the next thing lined up, and that's literally what you had to do, right? You knew that your role that you were in, you'd had a fantastic time there and done a really wonderful job, but it was kind of probably no longer aligning so much with your passions, right? And you were ready for what's next.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your third takeaway was around the fact that confidence often starts with someone believing in you before you believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Talk me through that. How have you had examples of that in your personal life?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, doing competitive sports growing up, having coaches, having mentors around, it really makes all the difference just to have one person believe in you more than you believe in yourself.
Yeah.
Because I think in New Zealand as well, having the tall poppy syndrome and stuff like that, it is so, so important to just have one person on your side, supporting your dreams, supporting your goals, even if it's just those really small steps that you're taking.
Totally.
And again, as Marg was saying, giving everyone an equal opportunity from all different backgrounds is just so important. And
And I'm not particularly familiar with the gymnastics world, but I'm sure that you've had some fantastic coaches and some coaches that maybe weren't as fantastic. I guess from a coaching perspective, is what are the main differences that you see that allow someone to really thrive in that environment versus someone that, you are going to doubt yourself a little bit more?
Yeah, I think it's really important with the coaches because especially in gymnastics, you start at such a young age. Yeah. And so coming through, just learning how the girls work and learning how everyone else learns, because that's also so important. Everyone's mind is so different, the way they think, the way they approach something.
Yeah.
And the coaches that I had that really stand out to me, they took the time to know how each girl learnt, how they thought, what their thought processes were.
Yeah.
Because I vividly remember a couple of coaches in particular, they knew what I was thinking in every single moment. And that made all the difference for them to come up and be like, hey, I know this is what you're feeling, but here's how you can work through it.
Well, there are some definite takeaways there for the business world, right? Especially for, managers and leaders, because you have to know your team.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've got to know what makes them click and how to motivate them, but also how to pick them up, when it does get tough. So I really love that. And I love that analogy. It was one thing that I learnt at my NZIM course that I was doing recently around the fact that you actually have to have a psychological contract with your team and show interest in them and make sure, you're there for them as a person as well, not just a robot, because, we are all humans at the end of the day. Hey, thanks so much for hanging out with me for 5 minutes and talking about your episode. I love it. And I love the parallel between gymnastics and business.
Thank you.
John T, first of all, welcome back from Vietnam. It's good to have you back in the office.
It's great to be back as well. Yeah, I'm super glad to be here.
We missed you a lot.
Yeah, I missed you guys too.
Well, that's good. Hey, the episode that you picked out to talk about was Rico's episode from Neurofit.
Yeah.
First of all, why that episode? What was it that really resonated with you?
First of all, I just found it incredibly interesting, but also I think the reason why it really resonated with me was because I think in my role at Digital Influence, something that has grown a lot is my mindset. And I think the whole episode is really around mindset as well, or has a lot to do with that. And I think obviously that comes down to you and Scott pushing that a lot around the core values as well. So yeah, that was the main reason why I picked it.
Do you know what? It's so funny you say that, because I was thinking about the fact that we've got 2 new team members joining us in a couple of weeks, right? And we've got Meg here, who's monitoring the episode, who's relatively new as well. And I was thinking about the fact that coming into DI can probably be a little bit of an intimidating place at the start.
Yeah, 100%.
Only from the fact that we do all have such strong mindsets. We've got our core values, we've got our daily rhythms, we've got our weekly things we do. And it's probably a little bit different from other agencies. When you talk about your mindset, what was it that you've noticed within yourself that you've really grown since your time at DI?
Well, it's definitely one of the things that I think I can relate to in this podcast that I listen to as well. But definitely backing myself, I think, coming to Google Ads and optimizing, Google Ads, you do have to back yourself in your decisions that you're making, because, some of these accounts do need optimizing. So when you're making these decisions, you need to be confident in, the decisions that you're making.
Yeah.
So I think that's one area that I've really grown in, and just being confident in myself. Yeah.
Yeah, we've seen that in you as well, John. It's like, you run some of our biggest Google ad accounts now, which is so awesome to see. And one thing that, Rico talked about in the podcast was around eliminating internal conflict and the cost of slow decisions.
Yeah.
Is there an example, or have you seen anything around a slow or dodged decision that's, cost more than making the call would have?
I think definitely something that I notice is that if something's not working and an account is, needing some optimizations, it is more important to make some changes, test those results, or test the changes to see if the results are better. If you're going to sit on something that's not working, it's not working, right? So, marketing, testing and marketing is super important. So,
well, that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, not everything is going to work all of the time, but, it's our job to test and measure, and it's our job to make sure that we are trying different things. It's the whole reason that one of our core values here is results, not reasons, because, we know that if we sit on something too long, then the result's not going to get there any quicker, and we need to try different things to be able to get there, right? So I really liked that example that he talked about around slow decision making, because, it is such a spiral, and you
100%.
can sit on something for way too long when, sometimes any action is better than no action. Another takeaway that you took from it, you talked about working on your internal narrative. Talk to me about that. Is there an example where, like, you've found your own internal narrative, like, talking you out of something, or that little bit of imposter syndrome when you're working with business owners?
100%. Yeah, I think, like I said, the whole area that I've really built myself and grown is around backing myself, and that has come from sometimes overthinking, not all the time, but it is just around having a healthy mindset, and they talk about being a healthy internal narrative, and so just learning to really grow that, and just taking a step back and reflecting on why I'm overthinking, or why I'm having these, I guess, self-doubting moments, but just taking a step back, reflecting on that, and just building a stronger internal narrative, which is what they talk about in the podcast. And I think it's just super interesting and really good to reflect on as well.
Well, it's so important, right? Because it is so easy to overthink. I'm a really natural overthinker, and I doubt myself often. And when I first especially got into the space, there were so many clients that were used to dealing with just Scott. And so being able to carve yourself out a space, not only a space at the table, but then, like, feeling like you belong at that table is really tough.
Yeah,
and
100%.
and I, it's something that I guess Scott's really pushed me on, especially around my overthinking. He often pushes me to, just to make a decision and back it. And it's definitely something I've got better at, but I've also noticed, it's something you've got so much better at, right? Like, there's nothing better when you come to us and you tell us us what needs to happen and what you think and what you would do if it was your business. And we've loved seeing that growth in you. So like, it's really epic to hear that part of the podcast resonated with you, because it's something we see in you every day.
I appreciate that.
Hey, I talked to Will a little bit about this too, but staying in the queue was one thing that you took away from this podcast. Talk to me about staying in the queue. What does it mean to you?
I would 100% say that, marketing is a long game, right? And so sometimes you're seeing some changes that you make, and maybe the results aren't coming through straight away, right? So it's just being patient and staying in the queue, and eventually those results will come through. But if they don't, it's about making changes quickly and testing new strategies to see if those results do come through.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it there, John. There's a real balance, I guess, between, waiting too long for a result, but also waiting long enough for a result to kick in, right? Like it's a real fine balance. But I think, for us, we've had some of our clients for almost 10 years now, which is amazing. And they've stayed in the queue with their marketing, and, they're 100%. Reaping the rewards of that. We're seeing market share increase. We're seeing epic results on a lot of our client accounts, but they don't always happen overnight. In terms of, if there was one thing that you'd want someone to take from Rico's episode, what would it be? What was the standout moment for you?
I would say, I think, again, it's just what we've been talking about, but, especially for anyone who's like a business owner as well, or just anyone watching it overall, just to back yourself, I think, and just to, take a look at your internal narrative. If you are an overthinker, if you have watched that podcast and you have, said to yourself, hey, like I kind of, that sounds like me, take a step back and reflect on your internal narrative and try and make that as healthy as possible, and just back yourself and be confident in yourself, because I think for the most part, like, you can do what you want to do, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense, because I think quite often, people aren't capable of realizing just how much they can do, right? People can do hard things, and you especially in your role, you were hired for a reason, you sit in the seat for a reason, you manage the accounts you do for a reason, and I can tell you that until you're blue in the face, but it's been really cool to see you around that internal narrative stuff really start to believe it in yourself too, and it allows for so much growth, right? And you've had so much growth since you've been here.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks for hanging out with me, Johns. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Luce, I don't know if I'm supposed to play favourites with Marketing for Business podcast episodes, but it's a little bit hard when you chose my sister's episode. Talk me through why you chose the episode with Olivia Hale from The Face.
Well, once again, I am a little bit biased because I do love Georgia as a person, but I really resonated with her episode because she quite literally built herself up from the bottom right up to the top. Yeah. And I really admire her in so many ways, but especially in her like business professional and how she holds herself.
Love it. One of your takeaways from the podcast episode was around building trust. Talk to me about why you think building trust is so important for business owners online, especially.
Well, trust it all comes down to trust, doesn't it? Like you won't get clients or you won't retain clients unless there is trust there, and that like goes with any aspect of your life, but especially with business. And I think something that Georgia's done so well is from the get-go, she has said yes to video. Yeah. And I mean, nobody loves being on video, but what she does so well is, yes, she gets nervous every time. Yes, she like hates doing it pretty much, but her results like show just like from the power of video, because you learn so much about somebody through video over like a static image.
Well, it was funny because I talked to Rach about the fact that, she spends so much time out shooting with clients, but they don't always love seeing her turn up, right? Yeah. Like we compared it to going to the dentist. It's good for you and you've got to do it, but you don't always want to do it. And I've really seen that with Georgia. She still doesn't watch her videos. Yeah. She still can't approve them because, it's not natural for you to do. But I often talk about the fact that you're not doing the video for yourself. You're doing the video for your audience, right?
Absolutely.
And it's been really epic to see that and to see, the growth in her. I guess, in terms of the way that it builds trust, why do you reckon that the way Georgia's done video, especially around her educational videos, builds trust faster than her just promoting the services?
I think she said it in the podcast with Scott that somebody had said to her, I felt like I knew you before I even like walked in the door, or something along the lines like that. Yeah. And I think that like speaks for itself. If especially like as a cosmetic injector, people are nervous, you know, whether you're a first time or you're not. It's a nerve-wracking thing. Yeah. And I think for somebody to book in with Georgia and say that eliminates quite a lot of that fear, because you already have trust in her before you've actually even met her. And I think that's what a lot of her clients feel with her. And I know that Georgia, you know, she's got so many recurring clients that she's now friends with them. And I think that is like the beauty of it. People know her before they've even met her, and then they just want to keep coming back.
Well, one of your takeaways that really resonated with me, and it, you know, it really relates to knowing her, is around the fact that to be successful, you don't have to be a shark. You know, Georgia said you don't always have to be ruthless to win. You can be kind, make connections, and the most successful people she has met shares openly. And I guess why did that, you know, really resonate with you? Why was that one of your key takeaways?
This was one of my favourite things that her and Scott spoke about, because I think, well, you just do think that in an industry you have to be cutthroat, but you absolutely don't. And I think the way that Georgia speaks about it is so refreshing. All she's wanting to do is actually raise the standards of the industry, which therefore pushes everyone to be better, and herself. And I think that is incredible. Like that's all you could actually ever want for your own business, but for the industry as well.
Well, you know, there's a saying that I often preach to the team, which is around the fact that, you know, rising tides lift all boats. And it is really cool to see, because I guess that's one of the reasons why Scott started this podcast, right? Is because we, you know, have the privilege and the pleasure of getting 40 hours a week of Scott's brain and Scott's knowledge. But for him to then spend, you know, over 200 hours now interviewing other business owners shows the exact same thing, right? Like,
absolutely.
The more that people can learn from each other, and the more that we can share our insights and our knowledge and our wins, how much better is business in general?
Hugely. And it also creates such a better culture and environment. Yeah. And I mean, not to be biased again, but like DI, that is one thing that we do so great.
Yeah, that's really, you know, like I said, one of our core values is influence through insights. And it's something that we see the team doing, you know, every week, especially on a Teach Me Thursday, right? Like on a Teach Me Thursday, everyone comes and shares one thing that they've been learning about, and it's not always business related. Sometimes they are fun animal facts, which aren't always my favorite,
Thank you, Sarah.
but it does mean that, you know, everyone is taking the time to share their knowledge, to lift the knowledge of everyone else, which means we have a better business and do better work for clients.
Exactly.
Loose 5 minutes has absolutely flown by.
Already?
Oh, but thank you so much for sharing your favourite takeaways from the episode with Georgia. I think there's a lot for people to learn there, and I hope that, lots of people will listen to it and continue to rise the tides.
Thanks for having me, Liv.
Meg, thanks for hanging out with me and wrapping up this rapid fire episode of the Marketing for Business podcast.
Yay.
Hey, you chose your favourite episode as Kim Schofield's episode. Now, I reckon you've got a little bit of bias going on here because you're producing her podcast at the moment. But tell me why you loved Kim's podcast and what about her work with Dancing Waters has made you pick this episode.
Yeah. Well, being from the top of the South Island, I was like, well, I liked the idea of the whole winery kind of thing. So I thought I'd love to see what her insights were about it. Yep. So I watched the episode and I just absolutely loved the way that she and the business operate very differently compared to other wineries. They do very different things compared to other people that I feel like is one of those very out the gate, out of the box ideas, and I thought it was really fascinating to learn.
Love it. Look, before we get into your takeaways, I've got a fun fact actually that you might not know. I was actually born in Blenheim as well, so there you go.
Wait, actually, I didn't know that.
I'm a Blenheim girl through and through. Hey, your first takeaway you put down was never listen to what others think if you really believe in what you're doing. First of all, talk me through why that resonated so much with you.
Oh, why does it not resonate with me? After doing some freelancing stuff beforehand, I just had so many people I remember saying like, oh, do you think this is a really good idea? Do you think it's sustainable? All of this stuff. And I remember fully believing to myself and going, yeah, I do think it's definitely something that I want to try anyway. Something that my dad would often say to me is, I mean, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I remember thinking to myself and going, what do I have to lose? I have nothing. I don't have kids. kids. I don't have to mortgage. I don't have anything of that to worry about. So doing it, I really believed in what I was doing and I really, really enjoyed it. And then it just got to a point where I was like, a little bit more not sustainability, what's it called? Consistency. It would be fantastic. And here I am at Digital Influence.
Well, we love having you. What you said before about, missing 100% of the shots you don't take really reminded me of a coin that Scott actually has, right? And on one side it says win and on one side it says learn. And I think that even from your, things that don't work out how you planned or, what some people might deem as losses or whatever that looks like, there's always something to learn, right? That's what your dad said. You've got nothing to lose. So you're going to learn from it or it's going to be awesome and you're going to love it. And I think you found a really incredible balance between both those worlds and now stepping, into the agency world. You've done a fantastic job.
Thank you.
When people were saying, oh, I'm not too sure and kind of doubting you a little bit, I guess, how do you tell yourself the difference between feedback worth taking and the noise worth blocking?
Oh, that's so fascinating. I feel like it just depends on who's saying it.
Yeah.
I've seen this thing so many times online where it's like, if you wouldn't take positive feedback from them, don't take negative feedback.
Yeah.
And I just think that has also stuck with me in a way that I, if I hear something and I go, and then I start overthinking and then I'll go, oh, but would I actually take your advice on any other situation?
Yeah.
No, okay, cool. I'm going to park it and I'm going to move on. Yeah, it will still be in the back of my head, but I'm not going to ruminate on it and think about it so much and make it a big thing.
I love it. One thing that I've really learned is around having different people in your corner that you'd take advice from. Sarah here. Sarah is really incredible at relationships and she has really strong female friendships, etc. So, if I had an issue with a friend or a relationship, Sarah's someone that, I'd go to about that. Whereas my dad, as incredible as he is, and, he's so fantastic at business, etc., it's not always the most empathetic or caring person. He cares in his own way, but, so he's not someone that I'd go to for advice about that. But if I had a business question or a tough client, he's someone I could go to for that too, right? So I think finding people to have in your corner for different areas of your life is so important because then you can take feedback and advice from them and you know that it's not going to kind of creep into any other areas.
Yep, no, absolutely. I totally agree.
Is tuning out other people's opinions, is that something that comes naturally to you or is it something you've had to build in yourself?
My goodness, it's something that I've had to build so much. I think I grew up in a big family, so I think that was a real big positive on my side.
Okay, yeah.
Hearing, some siblings say some pretty horrendous stuff sometimes and going, okay, you're my sibling, that's okay, you can say that.
Yeah.
But, sometimes things, obviously, you're human, things do get to you, especially if they're said constantly, you do start to believe some stuff. But I think, there's a massive difference between factual and emotional.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I've personally taken a long time to come to the realization with, because especially when emotions are really heightened, they both seem like the same thing.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
One thing Lucy talked about in her episode when we were talking about Georgia is the fact that, you don't have to be a shark to be successful. And one of your takeaways really reminded me of that, around the fact that just because everyone in the industry works one way doesn't mean you have to. Tell me why this stood out to you.
It stood out to me because when Kim ended up mentioning about how they were talking about the different ways that they could sell their wine, they were thinking obviously they could be in supermarkets and, bottle stores and things like that, but then they decided to completely shift and do website sales directly. Yeah. And I thought that was a really, really fascinating business tactic because obviously I don't feel like many New Zealand wines are doing that anyway. Yeah. One, because obviously they're local, they can be in stores. But yeah, I thought it was just a really fascinating way for it to obviously be more direct from a business perspective. But then, just from personal connection as well with the brand as well, I thought was really fascinating.
Meg, you've come from the media industry that can be a pretty brutal industry.
Yes.
And it is one where, a lot of people work a certain way. How did you manage to hold your own line and kind of break the mold a little bit in that space?
The biggest thing that I've learnt so far in my career is everyone is so massively different. And then throw the extreme extrovertedness as well from the industry on top of it is just a whole nother beast in itself. So I think learning and sticking to my guns and knowing, no, I think this is a good idea, and then not pushing it, but just putting it out on the table and saying it a couple times and going, no, I think we should do it this way, often happens, especially in the marketing agency world, which I've learned very quickly is something that we have to do, and sticking to our guns. And as someone who's just starting it took a while to grasp the concept of that. But just understanding who you are, getting to the nitty gritty and going, no, we'll do it this way because of this, is something that it's taken me a long time, but it's so good.
No, we love it, Meg. We love having you here. You've had, an epic couple of months and it's been really cool already to see the amount of growth in you. And, I touched on with Johns, it can be a pretty intimidating environment to come into because, sometimes with all of our dailies, all of our wins channels, all of our weekly things, it is really different from other places the way other places work. But, you've really settled in, you've made your role your own, and we're really lucky to have you. So thanks for hanging out with me.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So there you go. There is our team's favourite episodes, takeaways, insights and learnings from 200 Marketing for Business podcast episodes, and how epic was it to hear the things that have really resonated with them the most. The thing here at DI that Scott and I are most proud of is our team and the culture we've created, and it's so epic to hear, the growth in them. They're such high performers, and I've absolutely loved having a chat with them. And to Scott, congratulations on 200 episodes of the Marketing for Business podcast. It does take so much work, and we're so grateful to you for sharing your insights with people. You want everyone to have better businesses and better lives, and it's just been so incredible to see the commitment to this. And we also want to thank the 200 odd guests that have taken the time to share their knowledge with us as well. We're really, really grateful. We're grateful to Meg and Luke and Bronte who have produced this over the past 200 episodes, and hopefully I will see you in a future episode. But for now, have fun, take action and celebrate your victories.